In terms of the main two economic players, though, one often look at the whole idea of Thucydides' trap, that is to assess the more likely conflict between the U.S. and China. That is, I think the pathway to World War III is between NATO and Russia is well underway. But given that the main shift in international system is the U.S. hegemon having disappeared, that is, the U.S. no longer has a comfortable seat at the throne anymore. It's not the Russians; they're not that powerful. Indeed, as the new security strategy suggests, the Russians shouldn't be considered a threat to the U.S. The main, well, one has, I have to use the word threat, but at least challenge to U.S. primacy, obviously, is China. Now, this is why also the new nationalism emerging in the U.S. suggests that, everything, we're going from strength to strength. Everything was good. Who took it away from us? It was China. This is where the ugly nationalism come from. But but how do you see this playing out? Because a key concern now in the United States is that they can't compete anymore with China economically. Now, well, they do have the superior army, though, or the military. So do you see too many incentives now to transition or escalate from an economic war to a military conflict? Or how do you see the possibility now of this being, well, if not a trigger, a big part of coming World War III?
Look, the national security strategy is very clear about China. The goal, the long-term goal is to economically strangle China because China depends on trade for its resources, right? So the idea of the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is to cut China trade off from South America, right? So now you have all these American warships patrolling the South American waters, and so China will not be able to extract copper and lithium it needs for its AI and EV industries. It will no longer be able to import food and oil from South America. Okay, so that's part one. But even in Africa, Trump and America will challenge China. China has been for the past few decades investing very heavily in Africa, building infrastructure, creating good relations with African nations. China has a solid relationship with many African nations. But in the national security strategy document, it says very clearly that America will now work with its European and Japanese allies in order to help build up Africa, because Africa is the future. If you just look at demographics, Africa is the youngest continent, and it is the fastest growing continent. So, and the national security strategy says very clearly that before, America was too focused on ideology, on spreading liberalism, democracy, and now it's purely self-interest, purely economics. So basically doing what China does, but America says that, well, we have better products and we will use the full resources of our allies. So basically, to counter China, first of all, what America will do is strangle China economically, so cutting off trade. That's number one. Number two is that it's going to see the resource of its allies, mainly Japan and South Korea, as their own. It's going to see the wealth of Japan as something that is an economic tool for America to use against China. And the third thing that America's going to do is promote divide and rule, where it may back off militarily in the Southeast Asia, but it's going to encourage Japan to create greater conflict with China. And we're already seeing that, where for the past few weeks, China and Japan have had a bitter exchange of rhetoric. And we can see we can expect a greater escalation of that in the next few months.
That's a very unfortunate message to send to China. That is, if China wants to continue to have trade with the world, then it better build itself a very powerful military to be able to actually defend its trade partnerships from the U.S. No, so you can, well, again, this is another, I guess, comparison with the First World War and Second. That is, you have these rising industrial powers competing, and then, of course, unavoidably, almost the military as an instrument will join in on the mix. But your point there, though, is interesting, because if the U.S. just wanted to deter and have stability, then its own army would be on the front line. That is, it has the most credibility. I mean, if you want deterrence, you need to have that clear credibility, capability, and communication. But if you want to go into hot war, you don't want to be on the front line. You want a proxy. You want to send in the Kurds to fight the Iraqis. You want to use the Ukrainians to weaken the Russians, and I guess you want to throw in the Japanese to fight the Chinese. But is this what you're seeing, and you see this other places as well?
This is not the British there. This is just divide and rule. This is what empires have been doing for centuries. So yeah, I mean, Japan and South Korea will now be the cannon fodder in this great struggle between China and America, and we're already seeing that. And unfortunately, because you have tens of thousands of American troops in Japan and South Korea, and because the leadership class, the elite, have been co-opted by America a long time ago, they're basically all assets at this point, then Japan and South Korea will just do what they're told by the Americans.